Cardiff University Students' Union debate descended into chaos after a student who defended Israel's right to defend itself following the Hamas terror attack was heckled off the stage. The video was taken from a live stream of the union's annual general meeting on November the 23rd and featured a student who'd had 4 minutes to speak on the conflict. Here's what happened.
These actions are resulting in violence in the region as well. It is not a war against the Palestine people, but a response to a terrorist threat. It is also Palestine!
Wow. The video is an example of the issues surrounding free speech on university campuses and follows the recent no-platforming of speakers on subjects such as the trans debate and those with controversial views. Joining me now is Jonathan Hunter, co-founder and chair of the Pinsker Centre. The Pinsker Centre is a coalition of students and graduates which seek to educate about Israel and the Middle East at British universities. Good to have you with us, Jonathan. I mean, this is the old cliche here, really. Of all places on the planet where you should be able to disagree and robustly debate and respect other people's rights to debate, you would think top answer would be a university. Apparently not.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Ian. It's a huge problem which we experience at the moment, and it's a huge policy question which I think is gone unanswered for too long. You saw that video. That was a student who tried to make a speech condemning Hamas. Hamas, as we saw in your last segment, is a terrorist organization which has killed children, it's killed the elderly, it's kidnapped innocent civilians. This is a terrorist organization which is recognized as such across the Western world, and a student couldn't make that basic moral point without being heckled. I think, first of all, obviously it's a free speech question, but there's also a moral question and an educational question there. How is it that at a university we can't debate terrorism, we can't discuss the Middle East conflict? We've lost the ability to have a discussion about one of the most important and complex issues of our time. Yeah. And I think that's a failure of both civility, it's a failure of free speech, but it's also a failure of education as well.
Yeah, it's spot on. It's a failure of all of those things. And we're used to seeing this with, I mentioned the trans debate, environmental debates is another sort of classic area where things like this happen. And but with something like this, I mean, the Middle East, it's a complex geopolitical scene that's gone on for many, many years, predates the ages of anyone in that room, and us included. You might think that given the nature, the complexities, how challenging and clearly controversial, regardless of where somebody sits politically, this entire region, this dispute has been, that it would be the one thing that everybody in the room would agree on. Look, we might have differing views, but this is the place right now to listen to all of these voices, because we ain't going to progress unless we do. And we saw there, somebody was shouted down so badly and the chanting began that they had to be essentially taken off stage.
That's absolutely right. And if you look at what's happening at other universities, that was one debate at one particular student union at University College London, at Cambridge and at Oxford, both academics, different UCU branches, but also student unions as well. They have debated motions which describe the peace process as imperialist diplomacy. And ultimately, this conflict will only be by the parties talking, by the different nations in the Middle East coming together and reaching a peaceful resolution. And if we dismiss that as imperialist diplomacy, if we dismiss the entire notion of dialogue, how are we going to resolve this crisis? It only fuels violence, it fuels hatred, it fuels division, it perpetuates conflict. And maybe the students in that room want that. I don't know, but it certainly causes me cause for concern, and I hope it would cause for concern for others as well.
But if you wanted to look, sort of try and intellectualize this, which is quite hard to do because it's a wholly anti-intellectual position for somebody to hold, to suggest that our starting point is our concluding point, which essentially is what they are arguing with this. And therefore, anything that comes in between is a waste of everybody's time, because we've already decided what the answer is to this.
Yes, yeah, it's I think it's emblematic as way of, unfortunately, a different style of thinking which is emerging in my generation and Generation Z, which is a sort of debate which is dominated by sound bites from social media, often inaccurate, often not cited by legitimate sources. And you have these vicious algorithm cycles where people scroll through Instagram and they see one infographic and it leads them to another post, and it leads them to another post, and the material gets more vicious. And people's thinking just becomes entrenched until it's just groupthink. It's not really thinking at all.
Well, indeed. But if your starting point is that to even have the debate is some kind of imperialist position, then we're all the whole conversation is over before it's begun. Listen, great to have you on with us. Thank you for talking. We will speak again, I'm sure, on this. It's an incredibly always interesting subject. But that was Jonathan Hunter, who speaks in hope, I think, that some of those students, the poor little lambs who are clearly wrapped in some kind of curious 21st century cotton wool on this one, who are impenetrable to the very basic idea that someone out there might, just might, have a different opinion to them. Well, God forbid that is the case. And you know what? Even if they don't change their opinion, I think it's worth hearing, right? Surely, in any civilized world, the only way you move along, you teach a toddler this. Listen to what somebody else has got to say, hear their arguments, and then decide, then have a conclusion. But don't disrespect them. Don't start shouting like a pack of rabid morons, as these people were, to the point that the person who has a differing view is not even heard. I mean, if nothing else, as your nan would say, that's just flipping rude.